That's not the case. We're appealing to our own kind of base of people who would agree with us, and that includes people who vote Labour as well. And I agree with you. The self-destruction that continues to go on only benefits us, as far as we're concerned. And Scotland needs a party of the left. Before the 2015 election, I wrote a lot of poll and stuff for Common Space, and I said at the time, and I said right up to election, that the Tories would win outright, seen it coming. And I will also probably say as well that I think that the Tories potentially, really depends what happens in the list, Michael. It really depends what kind of education goes on in the list and how many people who, not SNP voters, pro-Indy voters, right? How many pro-Indy voters switch their second vote? If enough of them do that and switch to ourselves or the Greens or another pro-Indy party, etc., then it'll hurt the unionist cause. But if not, I think there's a real potential that the Tories could just potentially be the second biggest party in the Parliament. Just there's still a lot to play for, but they certainly seem to be getting almost the same vote now as the Labour Party. They certainly get a stronger base.
It's definitely interesting times. I mean, who would have predicted that the Tories become the second party in Scotland just a couple of years ago? But stuck in the middle there, as ever, is Willie Rennie, looking like a man who's brought a knife to a gunfight like he always does.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, the Alistair Carmichael stuff, if it gets settled before the election, will probably play a big part in Liam MacArthur and Tavish Scott's careers. Now, you speak to people from Shetland and Orkney and stuff, and they'll tell you the Lib Dem vote's solid up there. But remember, Carmichael held on by 800 votes. I'll tell you a wee anecdote about Willie Rennie during the referendum when I used to do all this, do all this stuff for Rick as well. And I was sitting in the office with Jonathan Shaffey one day, and um, we got an email. I think it was the Daily Mail or something like that. Anyway, it said Willie Rennie has commented on one of your leaflets about welfare, and said that we're wrong and all this, etc., and stuff like that. And we had checked very carefully our report, and we sent back the evidence, and we sent back a wee quote saying, we don't take lessons from Willie Rennie. We suggest he goes back to school because he can afford it, stuff like that. Every time Willie Rennie opens his mouth, and every time the Liberal Democratic Party in Scotland do something, I think it's a parody. They had a thing saying, "Is it we are the moderate, rebellious voice for Scotland," or something like that.
It's
It was something on.
oxymoron-tastic.
It was something on their website which was like, it was just so outrageous. It was kind of like, this is the place for the rebellion if you want to drink tea in the living room kind of idea. And the Liberal Democrats, again, I mean, really, there's a real chance that if they lose their constituency MSPs and Liam MacArthur and Tavish Scott, I think they've got one more somewhere, then they could end up with none. They could actually be out of the Scottish Parliament. If I'm Willie Rennie right now, this is the end of my career. This election has to be. If he doesn't get re-elected, this is the end of his career.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we should move on. Willie Rennie's a not something to dwell on, I suppose. So no. we should move on away from kind of party politics and parliaments to the other issue, because I know that it's something you've been involved with, and I've been down there protesting myself at various points, and I think you have as well. It's something that I've always wanted to go into in a bit more depth on the podcast, because it's shall we say a festering sore on the body politic of Scotland, which is Dungavel. And it's so swept under the carpet that I'm sure, okay, most of the listeners who are listening to a political podcast, most of the people who are listening to this will understand what it is. But I'm not sure they'll know the full extent of it. And if anyone doesn't know what it is, I think we should run through. Dungavel is Scotland's detention centre. There's your starter. What more could you tell us about it, Craig?
It's a horrible place. It's a prison. You can call it a detention centre all you like, but it is, without a shadow of a doubt, a prison. The last time we were there, I think it's a couple of weeks ago now, you go and there's a little bit of a carnival atmosphere from the protesters and stuff like that. But they do things like, which I think is really quite sad, is that they get the guys out to cut the grass with big noisy head strummers, petrol head strummers, when the protesters are coming, to try and block out the sound from anybody for the people inside. So that in itself has to tell you something, that they don't want the people inside there who are refugees.
Not criminals, they're just worth pointing criminals,
not done anything wrong. They've ran away from war and poverty, which anybody would do, and they've come to somewhere which they, I don't think the only further point away you could probably get north would be to go to Iceland, as far as they possibly can. And what they've been told is, come and stay in this prison, which is overcrowded, which been several people over the years have went on hunger strike. We in this country in the last couple of days were shaking our collective fists at Guantanamo Bay, right, for Shika Amar, who was stuck behind bars for 13 years for something he didn't do. No charges were ever filed. He got snatched off the street. These are people who have done nothing wrong, but yet they've been kept in a detention centre. Now, you can say this is a UK immigration detention centre in Scotland, fine. But the cops that patrol outside are employed by the Scottish government. They're part of that 1,000 extra police officers that the SNP like to talk about being on the street. Why, if Hamza Yusuf, for argument's sake, can go and talk about Syrian refugees and say this is absolutely deplorable, we want to take people in. Why are the Scottish government not doing everything they possibly can? Like, don't provide any cops, don't provide any council services, don't give them any staff. If you don't have staff and police officers to run this centre and to look after it, then the centre has to be shut down. There is too much enabling of Dungavel going on. I got a friend of mine who I become friends with through Rise, or through the Left Project, called Pinar, actually. Pinar was in there at 15 years old. She's now got her degree. She's just actually, I think she just got a master's, if I'm right. She's a success story out of Dungavel. You're locking people up. I don't even know the names of them. I'll tell you this: when I went down there last time, I was on the hill. But you can go on a hill at the back, which overlooks the courtyard, and there must have been about 150 people in there. Just a sea of people started flooding out the barrack. It's like barrack blocks, flooding out the barrack blocks. They are surrounded. I mean, you've been there yourself, Michael. What? There's not a lot of space in there. It's not a big square meter area prison. It's very tightly compacted
Yeah.
in amongst those couple of buildings. So it should be shut down. It should be shut down yesterday. I don't think there's any question of that. It's not holding tens of thousands of people. It's not holding dangerous people. It's holding women, families, old men. I'm sorry. It's just
Okay, so you're saying there has been, in a certain sense, Scottish government support towards it, but I think it is also important to look at this in the context of UK in immigration policy, because it is a UK level system. It's the UK system that pushes people in there.
definitely. And we need to address that massively. You're looking at what is the Tory plan? 20,000 refugees over the course of 5 years. So we're getting 4,000 a year. Now, there's 2 million people in Jordan, next door to Syria. What we are proposing to take in is nonsense. We need immigration. This is what I don't understand about people on the right who constantly go on about immigration. We can't have immigration because we need to protect the pensioners. But they don't fully understand that in order for people to continue to get their pensions, we need to bring more people in order to pay into the system, to pay for that. It's such a backwards way to look at it. I mean, you've had families in there, with kids who, are as young as 7, and they've been held in there for over a year. But they were never given asylum here. They were sent to asylum in Germany. Why were they being held in there? This is what I don't understand. Why is it that we can take in 20,000 refugees from Syria and we can house them? Or I think, what was it, 15 families are going to stay in the Isle of Bute. That was in the paper the other day. Why are these people in there? What specifically is it about them? What is it they've done? Surely, what's your name? Where have you come from? There's a process for this. Why does it take a year? Why have you got to hold children in a prison for a year?
It's a disgraceful thing that it happens, and it is. I just want to, in fairness, I just want to say it is a UK
Yeah,
administered
it is,
thing.
yeah.
But what I would like, at least, and when I've been down there protesting or whatever it was, I have seen a lot of SNP people there
Yeah,
outside and protesting as well. What I would
absolutely.
like to see myself, I don't know if you're agreeing with this, maybe like I might stopping support to it to close it down is certainly a radical suggestion, but like what I would at least like to see is that more towards the SNP leadership come out and campaign on it. Say it's a bloody disgrace. It would also
Yeah.
help. It would also help them. They'd say they could point out that this appalling place exists because of
Mhm.
UK policy, and say we in Scotland want the power not to have appalling places like this. But they don't seem to at least even campaign on it that much.
Every time we do a protest at Dungavel, if Hamza Yusuf was to turn up every time and hold a press conference on it. Let's say they do it every week. The SNP have got a serious amount of power over the government. I'm not criticising them over it. What I'm saying is that if we're serious about it, we can change it. We can do it. We don't require extra power to do it. There's certain things that we can do to really de-enable what's going on. And I think that, and I agree with you, that MSPs, MPs, SNP MPs have all been up there. So I don't doubt their sincerity in wanting to close it down. But I understand, and what will be retorted back is that, well, when you get to a certain level of government, there's certain things you've got to do in a certain way, and that's absolutely fine. But let's do something. It is a blight on Scottish society, on this progressive society that we so want to build. And on the one hand, we're talking about saying we'll take in as many refugees as possible, but on the other hand, we've got this centre here. I agree that this is a UK government-run facility, and it is their policy. But me personally, this is why we need other voices in Parliament to kind of drag this debate along to the left, so that we're not having a debate about if we can close Dungavel, but when are we going to close Dungavel, But I certainly agree with you. There has been, the last time I've seen, not the last time, the time before, Natalie McGarry was there, for instance. She was up there, and she wasn't looking for a mic or a stand. She was there with her parents. So I've got tons of respect, for the different campaigners. Chris Stevens is another one, who constantly, tries to go on about it. But it's I don't know, it's a very, very hard thing to see when you're standing on a hill overlooking a prison, and 20 feet away or 30 feet away on the other side of that, what is it? Is it about a 10 or 15 foot high metal fence? There's just people just, wanting to get out.
Who've done absolutely nothing.
Nothing, exactly.
Okay, so I'm sure this is one reason, the power to change such things, but the question I ask everyone on the podcast is, why do you personally, aside from party motives, which may or may not come into it, but why is it that you personally support Indy for Scotland?
Well, I've got a young child, and she's 6 years old. She'll be 7 at the start of December, and I look about now to the opportunities that I have in life compared to my parents. And if we continue on this path, in this union, then her life chances are ultimately bleak beyond belief. And I believe fully that with independence, not only will Scotland become on a much more progressive path, moving away from certain policies and certain ways of doing things, but the same will also be true for the rest of the parts of Great Britain, of the island. And I think you're starting to see that. I think what's happened in England has been a direct effect because of Scotland. But independence, for me, is firmly centred in the political agenda. It is a necessary tool to break up the British state. And once that's broken up, there'll be no going back for them. These people who have been in power for hundreds of years and passed it down through their little lineages will all of a sudden find that the wealth and the resources of a nation as wealthy as Scotland, we all know it is. And, the lies and the spinning papers know we are a wealthy nation, and that wealth should be used to help the people as best it can.
All right, thanks for coming on, Craig. That's been brilliant.
Thank you.
So there you go. That was Craig Paterson from Rise, and I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully now we're back on the case. It shouldn't be so long before the next one comes out. As usual, the last thing on the show is that the guest chooses the tune, and this is what Craig chose to go out with. So, speak to you next time.
Una mattina mi sto svegliato, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Una mattina mi sto svegliato e ho trovato l'invasore. Oh partigiano, portami via, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Partigiano, portami via, perché mi sento di morire. E se io muoio da partigiano,